As America was developing and America started to spread westward, and then all these conflicts happened, and it was very, very difficult. And then leading to the reservation time period, there were government acts that were put in too. When I say act, I mean it was a law. Okay, it was an American law, federal law. There was one that cut up the reservation into small pieces, and every family was given a piece. It was probably about 160 acres or something like that. So every family was given an allotment of land, and they were given a log cabin, a wagon, a team of horses, cow, some chickens, and some seeds to plant corn and stuff like that. And they told us to be farmers. They gave us farmer clothes and some farm equipment to dig up the earth and put the seeds in. Every family was given these things. That we got these rations from the government. And these rations were really unhealthy food. Got diseases from those. Well, in a lot of the reservations, the land was not fit to be farmed. It was never meant to be farmland. So a lot of Indians, they had no choice. Their families were starving, and some Indians sold their land. And the only people who had land in those days was white people. Or white people who married Indian women, and through their women, they made loans and bought the land. Even though it was the native woman's land, it was a white guy behind it that was acquiring all this land and making a lot of money without having to pay any taxes because his wife is an Indian. Because Indians had this trust fee, tax-free kind of thing back then. This happened a lot in those days. There's ranchers, too, that married Indian women, and through the Indian women, they leased land to run their cattle on, horses and stuff like that. And then some of the Indians who were living in these log cabins, since they couldn't farm on their land, they would lease the land to this white rancher. Actually, it's through his wife, yeah, because she's Indian. And then he might work for that guy, too, at the same time. So they still stayed out in their log cabins, is what I'm saying. So people were spread out apart from each other. These log cabins are far apart. 160 acres here. So all these log cabins are spread out. And so they have to work. They have to haul water. They have to cut wood. They have to, all day long they're doing things. They didn't really see each other. I mean, the different families. They didn't really see each other. One reason why they looked forward to going to church is because they could see their relatives. And then the priests, they used certain concepts from our culture and they disguised it in Christian mentality. For example, the warrior societies and the women's societies that existed long time ago. The churches used that same kind of thinking and applied it to Christianity. So you had these men's groups and women's groups, and they got together and met after church, and they did certain things and planned for certain religious events and so forth. That's what they did was they took a traditional concept and transformed it into a Christian thing to keep the Indians coming to church. This is how they had the Indians look forward to coming to church. So that's how it was. So they came to church also to see one another because they didn't see each other the whole week. Because some of these guys lived kind of far apart from each other. So that's how they broke down the Teoshpaye. That's how the government broke down the extended family system. And the churches then come in and use their mentality by just taking ideas from traditional society and incorporating it into a Christian way. And that's how, again, this is how a lot of Indians started to accept Christianity. That's tricky, yeah, that's really sneaky. The government and the church is working together like this. That's how they broke us down. So now here it is 100 years later, and it worked. It totally worked. We defeated ourselves. Now we're against each other. Now we try to pull each other down. So it worked. Every time we say things like, well, hey, I'm right and you're wrong, and if you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. And I will prove you're wrong. I'm the solution, and if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. See, these are all unhealthy, dualistic things to say. It's always putting things into two categories. And that's totally, totally not the same way as our ancestors. In our ancestors' way, there's at least three perspectives to every situation. There's at least three. But in duality, they only present it as two. That's how come it's a problem. So on the reservations, the early 1900s, people are starting to go to church now. They're dressing like everybody else, American society. We're all living in log cabins. We're all eating foods that our bodies are not used to. And now we're starting to believe things that are incomplete. And we're believing a different way. So everybody is going through this at the time. And medicine men were taken away. They were put in mental institutions. They did this so that Indians wouldn't go to them for help. This is sad. This is really sad. So once a week, Indians are looking forward to go to church because they see their relatives they didn't see all week long. They're starting to believe what the priests are saying. They're starting to learn how to read, and they're reading the Bible. And now they're saying that, okay, we're going to live God's law. And they apply this to the everyday life, and parenting becomes super strict. Parents are whipping their kids when they go out of line. I mean, literally whipping them. That never was the case. We had a different parenting style before Western civilization came to us. And we're starting to follow the Christian concepts. There's a verse in the Bible that says something about blessed is he who has the most arrows in his quiver, for he is truly blessed unto God, or for he truly has earned a place in God's kingdom, or something like that. And what this verse means is that the more kids you have, the better your chances are of getting into heaven. So at this time, Lakota families really expanded. Yeah? Before that, the traditional way is that at most you should only have 3 kids. And that each child should be spaced at least 2 years apart from the other. That was the traditional way. And now women are having children every 9 months, and you see families from the 1930s. They got about 8, 10 kids, and maybe even more. Yeah, because they're all following the Catholic way or whatever religion is on that reservation. And then when these people grow up, there's problems. This is how it is. There's reasons why we were only supposed to have 3 kids. In the ancient way, the reason why was for the benefit of the mother, so the mother could be an effective mother, and the husband could be an effective father to 3 children. But when it gets really more than that, it gets more difficult. Once people were having 10, 12 kids. So it's no wonder that they used very strict parenting back then. Everything was changing in our lifestyle. Parenting styles were changing. The Tioshpae concept broke down. Let me explain to you what a Tioshpae is first, before I continue. A Tioshpae is like this. My mother and her sisters are all my mothers. I call all of them Ina, mom, mother. The husbands of these women are my fathers. I call them Ate, all of them. All the children from those marriages are my brothers and sisters. Okay? That's my mother's sisters. My mother's brothers are my uncles, and I call them Lekshi. Their wives are my aunties, and I'll call them Tomi. And the children from those marriages are my cousins. And that's my mother's side of the family. Now, on my father's side of the family, my father and his brothers are my other fathers. So I call them Ate. Their wives are all my other mothers. So I call them ina. The children from those marriages are all my brothers and sisters too. So look at that. I got a bunch of mothers and fathers on both sides of the family. It's pretty cool. Yeah? And all the moms and dads are just as important as the biological ones. So any one of them, if I misbehave, any one of these moms and dads can punish me, discipline me, or teach me. Yeah, like maybe I'm sitting there and just throwing weeds in the air. Oh, gee, nothing to do. Anyway, sitting out there on the prairie, just throwing weeds in the air, and any one of my fathers can come to me and say, "Hey, Dave, let's go fishing." Any one of them can do that and take me and teach me how to do something. Or let's go hunting. Any one of them could teach me that. Or I could say, hey, let's make something to help mom do whatever. Yeah, he's going to be teaching me something. Any one of my fathers can do that. So that's really a wonderful thing. So in our ancient Tioshbae, the community raises the children. See how that works? Pretty cool. My father's sisters, those are my aunties, my other aunties, and all their husbands are my uncles, and those children from those marriages are my other cousins. This is a Tioshbae system. So when the reservation started, and remember I said every family was given a piece of land and a log cabin and stuff like that. When that happened, that started the breakdown of this Tioshbae. So now it's to the point where today, see, my mother had two sisters. Technically, I should be calling all three women ina. But the other two women did not want me calling them ina. They said, you're not my son. You're my nephew. You're my sister's son. So that means you're my nephew. So you don't call me ina. You call me Tongwi. I'm your auntie. So these two women, I've known them as Auntie Mona and Auntie Phyllis. Even though in the Lakota way, they're my mothers. They didn't want me to call them that. See how effective the brainwashing was. Yeah, it's crazy. So I had to grow up calling these ladies aunties, and really they're not. My aunties would be my uncle's wives, my mother's brothers. She has a brother by the name of Paul, and he was married to a lady named Audrey. That is my auntie, Auntie Audrey, Uncle Paul. So my mother's sisters that were telling me that I was supposed to call them auntie, that's incorrect. But this is how they grew up. So it shows you the brainwashing was very effective. The government and the churches, their plan worked. It destroyed our Tioshbae. The early 1900s, we have a situation, where the brainwashing has started. There were certain stories in our world. One had to do with the winter solstice, where the souls gather at the north. Those that want to. The spirits can stay here as long as they want. There's incorrect beliefs that say that when you cry too much for somebody who just died, that it traps them on the earth. That's false. That's totally false. You have no control over somebody else's soul. You never did, and you never will. Nobody does. That would violate natural law. But some souls choose to stay for a time, and when they're ready to continue the next phase of their soul journey, they all gather at the north. In Lakota Star Knowledge, it says they go north to a place where there's a lot of pine trees. And there they wait for a woman. She's going to come from the stars. Whoever wants to go that year, they're going to be there, and then she comes and gathers them, and they go up to a certain star constellation. And then there's a whole thing that happens from there. I'm not going to go into that part, okay, because that's getting into a longer story concerning the journey of the soul. I'm just going to focus on this one part. But this happened on winter solstice. Back then, what people would do is they would put out some food for the relatives who died in the past that maybe they're going to go now. And so they do that in the nighttime. And so the soul is not going to eat the food. What the soul is going to do is take the spiritual essence from the food. This is tu. Tu, everybody has that. Your tu connects to your soul. For example, it's in your shirt, it's in your clothes. So if you travel to China and you forget your t-shirt over there, your tu is still there. So even though it's 10,000 miles away, it's still connected to you. So if something happens to it, if an unhealthy energy touches your shirt, it's going to get to you, and you could get sick from that. That's why we're told and taught not to leave our clothes and our toys and our belongings just anywhere. We're supposed to take care of our things because of this tu concept. So that gives you an idea of what tu is. It's also in things we make, our clothes, it's in food. When you make a bow or anything that you make with your hands, because it flows from your hands as well. And it's in your hair and it's in your blood. This is tu. This is what families did a long time ago, was they would put out a plate of food on that night or a bowl or whatever, and it's for any soul to take the spiritual essence from it before it heads north. It's a gesture. Thank you for being here, and until next time. Doksha Ke. There's no goodbye, because it's going to come back again. There's no goodbye. So this is what they did on that night. That was one story. So just remember that part. The second story has to do with the old man that lives at the north. His name is Wazia. At a certain time of the year, which usually happens around the end of January and the beginning of February, and maybe even into March, sometimes this old man would go crazy because it's so cold. He would lose his mind. So he would come outside and he'd come out naked. That cold made him crazy. So he goes outside and this pack of wolves surrounds him. They're going to try to kill him. They're going to eat him. And so he sees that. But this is a very powerful man. His grandsons made the four directions. And they're grandfathers now too. West, north, east, and south in that order. Those are the four directions. His grandsons made those directions. And they're the ones that created the seasons. So anyway, that just goes to show you how Wazia is really a powerful guy. This is not God, okay? So right away I know Christians want to say, oh, that must be God. No, it's not. His name is Wazia. Another sub-story. The first humans were tricked to come on the earth by a man named Iktomi. This is a trickster. He can present himself as a really nice guy and tell you how smart you are and you really have good ideas, and he's so fortunate to have found you for a friend. He's that kind of guy. Then when you're not looking, he puts a knife in your back. Maybe you know people like that, yeah? Ex-wives and so forth. Yeah. Former best friends, you could say. Anyway, he tricked some people to come on the earth from underground. But at the same time, he also made a pact with the wolves. This was supposed to happen millions of years ago. But the wolves were starving. They couldn't find any food. The food was always escaping from them. So they were starving. Their wolf pups were dying because they were starving. And they were really in a bad condition. So Iktomi said to them, I know a food that really tastes good, and when you drink its blood, it's gonna taste so good you're gonna go crazy. And you're gonna want more and more and more. So the wolf said, yeah, right, you're Iktomi. We shouldn't believe you. You're going to trick us. And Iktomi says, no, I said, I promise, but if I keep my end of the bargain, you have to be my allies forever, he says. And so the wolves back down, but then they look at their pups and they're all dying. Pretty soon there's going to be no more wolves. So they decide to take up Iktomi's offer. So Iktomi says, okay, you go to this one place. There's a lot of trees there, but in the center of the trees is a wide open space. Today this is called Preshla in the Black Hills. It's in the center. It's like a prairies in the middle of the mountains, and the prairies really high. This is the area Iktomi is talking about. He told the wolves to gather in the woods all around that area. He said, and be in a circle. He said, I'm going to bring your food there, he said. And when I give the word, you can go in and have a feast. So the wolves say, if this doesn't happen, and we don't have a pact with you. And Iktomi say, okay, that's the deal. So Iktomi runs back to the humans and he says, okay, I got a really good place for you guys to live, so come with me. So he takes them to the same area as Preshla. He takes them to this area. It's wide open, and there's woods all around. So he says, anytime you need food and stuff, you just go into the woods and you find it. It's all there. So they think, wow, this guy is really a nice guy. Yeah, the humans are saying, this guy's a really cool guy. Thanks for helping us. So Iktomi says, no problem. So then he leaves the group, and then he signals to the wolves, there's your feast. So the wolves come in. There's thousands of wolves coming from all sides, and they start to massacre the humans. They take the children and the women first, and they're murdering them. They're just ripping them to shreds and ripping them to pieces. And see, when you do something that's really highly emotional, you're leaving an energy in that location. So if it's something really mean, like a murder or a rape, there's an unhealthy energy that stays there in that location. So here we have thousands and thousands of women and children being slaughtered, and men too. They're being slaughtered by the wolves. And the wolves are drinking their blood, and they say, geez, Iktomi's right. This tastes good. And it drives them into a frenzy. Now, when you do something, whatever it is, remember, there's an energy that's in your communication. Communication is not just things you say, it's things that you do as well. And it becomes a part of you when you communicate. That energy goes out, but it's also inside you too. People feed it when you come around. They say, hey, that guy's a pretty cool guy. They just know it. But it works the other way too, where if you're really unhealthy and you do a lot of killing and stuff like that, people are going to feel that too. And so these wolves, they're slaughtering these humans because they never experienced this before. They don't know how to defend themselves. All they can do is run. They have no weapons. So as they're running, they're being slaughtered. And so this is giving a lot of energy in the area. The wolves are leaving a lot of murderous, unhealthy energy in this area, and it's also in their hair. It goes into their hide. So this energy in killing all these people, it's in their hides. And so when the wolves have babies, that energy is still there from that massacre, from that human massacre in Preshla. This is why wolves are considered a natural enemy to humans in the Lakota way. So for this reason, there is a teaching that says little children and women who are pregnant are not supposed to touch anything that comes from a wolf, because of that energy in their hair can make them sick because of what happened. See, this is generational. This is something the wolves pass on every generation, and it's still there. And this is why they have a natural hunger for humans and thirst for human blood. These are the enemies. This comes from that story. So, now that you know that part, now let's go back to Wazia. Okay? As I said, Wazia goes crazy because it's so cold. He goes nuts. He's numb. His mind goes, dokcha, you could say, really somehow. He goes outside, and this pack of wolves surrounds him. But they don't realize this is Wazia. The wolves think this is just an old man. He's an easy kill. As the wolves circle him, they surround him, they circle him, and they start to jump at him and attack. And as each one lunges at him, he grabs it and breaks its neck and, grabs its mouth and pulls it completely off. The lower jaw just pulls it off, and he kills them all. And some of them are injured. He breaks their legs, and they're laying there. They can't run. So while they're alive, he skins the hides off of them, and they're screaming in pain, and he lets them die like that. So then he gets all these wolf furs, and he puts them on himself. He puts them for pants. He makes a pants and a jacket and a cap, completely made of wolf fur. Now he's coming south. He's coming south to kill. Remember, he's crazy. He's lost his mind. So he's coming south. As he gets to a certain point, the winds from his grandson, who lives in the south, start to come up. The southern direction is blowing his winds to the north. As Wazia gets to a certain point, he feels this warmth, and it starts to warm his body. It starts to warm his heart. And then he wakes up from this craziness, like he's coming to. And he's like, gee. He looks at himself and he's like, what the? And he rips off all these wolf furs that he made for pants and the jacket and the cap. He's like, what the heck am I doing? So he takes off all this stuff and he burns it up in the fire. Then he makes a sweat lodge ceremony, and he goes in there and he does it to purify himself, to get all that energy off from that wolf fur. And also what he did to the wolves, he gets all that, he gets rid of that energy, so he's cleansed from it. Okay? Then he comes out, and then he makes an apology, and he makes an apology to the buffalo people, and he says he's only going to take what he needs, but he's going to use every part of the buffalo. And he apologizes, and he makes skin offerings. He cuts parts of his skin, he puts it in the ground as offering. And then he goes and he kills some buffalo, and he processes it. He processes the meat. He makes things out of the buffalo hides, the bones he makes into toys and things you can use, and the stomachs are going to be used to make soup, and he gives thanks to the buffalo people. And then he apologizes, and he says every part is going to be used, and it's going to be used to feed the people. He said, none of this is mine. He says. So the buffalo people accept his apology. Then he proceeds further south. So he comes to the people, he goes from village to village, and he gives these things that he made. And he goes to all the little kids, and he's made toys out of the bones. So he gives toys to these little kids, and this is happening just before April, okay, around that time period. March, April time period is when this is happening, okay? So the kids are like all happy, so he gives everybody hugs, and he blesses all the women who are going to have babies that spring. They're pregnant. He blesses all these women so that their children will be born healthy and strong, and he sings songs for the kids so they dance, and he does this from community to community. Then he goes back up north. That's a good year, he says, and he goes back up north to his home. Now that happens around spring equinox. So these two events, see, these are kind of nice. I mean, the end of the stories are kind of nice. So when the Christian priests on the reservation, when they learned this stuff, they said most of our beliefs are evil, and that means they come from the devil. I said that earlier. But they took some of the things that could be kind of Christian. So they took those elements only and left the other part of the story go. But they took those elements and combined it into Christmas. They combined that into Christmas. And so the early days of the reservation, all day long on December 25th. They butcher a cow or something, and the men folks stand outside and they're making soup and tanija soup from the intestines, and the women are inside. They're making things too, and the kids are outside playing in the snow and stuff like that. They go in from time to time to warm up, and then they might have a lunch, and then children play games and stuff on the inside. And when evening time comes, when it's dusk, the sun goes down, they take small plates of food to the cemetery, because usually in those days, the cemeteries were beside the churches. So they would take these plates of food and they would put it on the graves. That's supposed to be for the spirits of the people who are buried in that grave. So you see where that element comes from? That's supposed to happen on the winter solstice, but the priests moved that to December 25th. And then they would go back inside. After, they might sing some church songs, and then they go back into the community building, and then they have their feast. And then somebody dresses up like Santa Claus and hands out toys, and they call this guy Wazia. They don't say Santa Claus, they said Wazia. You see, they're taking that concept from the spring equinox event, and the priests moved that to December 25th. So they took elements from these stories and combined it to happen on December 25th. But the sad reality was that most of the children didn't know the full story. They didn't know about Wazia losing his mind, yeah, and killing those wolves and coming with, covered in wolf fur. And they didn't know that part. And they didn't know the part concerning the souls going to a place north where there's a lot of pine trees. And the lady from the stars is coming and she's going to take them to their next part of their soul journey. They didn't know that part because the churches said that comes from the devil. You see what's happening here? This is showing you that we're starting to lose valuable information from Lakota Star knowledge. But hey, this show exists and it's broadcasting throughout the whole world. And and so it's not dead. The churches didn't win. I'm sorry. I'm still here, and as long as there's going to be an internet, these recordings will always be here. So the churches didn't win. They didn't win after all. Not as long as these shows are here. Anyway, this is some really old information. Just think about it. I'm not asking you to believe it or anything like that. There's some information I wanted to share because I know there's a lot of people that don't know about these things, and that before churches came and before our great-grandparents became Christians, there was a very, very complex and very wonderful, extraordinarily beautiful belief system that we had that, to me, makes one hell of a lot more sense because it shows that there is no end. It just keeps going. It keeps going. We come back, and sometimes we travel together forever. You're not alone. Don't worry. Just don't worry. You are not alone. If you're listening to this show, I'm with you too. So don't worry. I thank you so kindly for taking time to tune in and listen to this show. I really do appreciate it, and it's the holiday season, so it's time to be happy, be joyful, but also a time that's equally important is to remember those who are hurting, remember those who are suffering. They're going through a real difficult time right now. Please remember them, send good thoughts and prayers to them, because the whole human family, we are all together, and what happens to one happens to others. So when we remember them and think of them and send good thoughts and prayers and energies to them, see, we really are helping them. And sometimes, we're in that position too. And it's always nice when somebody thinks of you when you're going through that. All of those who are having a good time to remember those who are going through a difficult time, going through sadness, heartbreak, anger, anything that is really, really hurting them, or it's just difficult for them. Think of them. The other way is true too, is that when something good happens to you, it's affecting others around you too, depending on what kind of people they are, but generally we celebrate with one another as well. We support one another through difficulty and we celebrate with one another through good times. This is where our expression comes from when we say the honor of one is the honor of all. This is an old Lakota phrase, and it is true because mitakwe oyasi, yeah, we are all related. We are all from the human family, and what happens to one happens to all, or affects all, I should say. So again, what happens to one affects all people. So this is why it's important to think of those who are going through a hard time. When you're celebrating, always keep those in mind who are hurting. Okay? So with that, I wish you a Merry Christmas. So with that, in our way, everything is circular, so we do not have a word for goodbye. So in our language, we say in Lakota, until next time, which is Doksha Ake. To read more about Lakota Star Knowledge spirituality, you can read my book called Wichocha Otechike. You can see the book cover on the right side of this screen. This book contains the information to what I talk about on my Lakota spirituality videos. To purchase this book, please click below where it says Show More. Clicking on that link will open up the description below, and there you will see a link called To Purchase My Books. As you will see, it's an eBay link. Click on that eBay link, and there you will see the information to get this book. Lila Pila Mayelo. Thank you very much.